Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to wherever you are in this galaxy far, far away. My name's Charlie Savidge,
My name's IIntro.
and welcome to episode 25 of Outer Rim Radio, the podcast made by Star Wars nerds for Star Wars nerds. And today we'll be discussing Star Wars Visions Volume 2, which has been, a while coming since, it came out like about a month ago now. But
Yep.
I'm excited to get into it.
But yeah, before we do that, just a little bit of news we wanted to talk about real quick.
The smallest
Nothing,
bit of news.
yeah, smallest bit of news we've had in a while, but I think it's worth highlighting. Ming Na Wen. Do you want to
Yeah.
talk about that, Charlie?
Yeah, Ming Na Wen, and if you're unfamiliar with her, she played Fennec Shan. She's had several other acting roles. She was Chun-Li in the Street Fighter movie, which is a hilarious movie that people should... Okay, nobody should watch it, but everyone should watch it, sort of deal. Like, it's hilarious. It's kind of like... I put it on the level as The Room. It's hilarious. But, she was in that. And she was also Mulan.
Yeah, like a
Yeah,
ton of stuff.
Many other actual important movies, but I just love talking about the Street Fighter movie whenever I get a chance because it's just the corniest thing on the planet, and I just love it. But yeah, she got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, adding to her many honors and achievements. She got it on May 30th. And she said she still can't quite wrap her head around it, saying, "I'm so honored, but I don't feel worthy of it." She says, "I'm literally having anxiety dreams about it." Or prior to that, that's what she said. But it was a super cool. It seemed much more chill than, the Carrie Fisher one. We didn't have anybody following anyone back to their house, I don't think. So,
Yeah, Jesus,
thank God for that.
Well, at least with this, it's kind of funny to hear her say, like, I mean, it's humble, but to say, like, I don't feel worthy. It's like you're literally in the rare air of a Marvel star. She was in Agents of Shield.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Obviously, Star Wars, and a
Mm-hmm.
Disney princess.
Yeah.
So it's like
Yeah.
you've been in a ton of like commercially successful things. Like, you're
Right.
pretty recognizable throughout your career. So it's just kind of funny, but it's super cool to see, and it's always nice to see someone from Star Wars get recognized, and showing that like you can go to Star Wars, and that's not that could just be a part of your career. It's not the end of it or the beginning of it. So I'm super happy with that.
Right. Yeah, she's been in so many different things over the years, so super cool to
Yeah.
see.
Yeah, cool. Well, Charlie, we're not really here to talk about news, considering we don't have too much. So, just want to pop right in, and we'll start talking about Volume 2 of Visions.
Yeah. Overall, how did you feel about Vision Season 2?
It was nice. I got to say, Vision Season or Volume 1, Season 1, whatever you want to call it. Our first round of Visions, because it was purely Japanese animated, it was that anime style, right?
Yeah.
It was interesting. It was fun, but I enjoyed watching these for the differences in them, which sounds pretty generic to say, but it was nice to see lots of different styles of animation, lots of different cultural notes. And one of the things Charlie and I have talked about on and off for a while on the podcast is just how people look at the Force and how the Force is interpreted, and the way that is kind of used through the different mediums of Star Wars, what the Force means. And I think this was actually a great representative of that, of showing like, hey, what does the Force actually mean? And I really love the exploration of that in this this volume.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I love seeing all the different cultural influences throughout this. I think I love the different interpretations of the Jedi, these like just kind of like different settings and different planets that I really love. All these different animation styles I think sticks out the most because while yes, the anime styles are different, all of them last time were, anime. And this time now we get all sorts of different crazy animation, including, like the Wallace and Gromit studio. I think that one just sticks out the most because that's so different than everything else. There's still some returning anime, some things that are closer to Clone Wars, some things that are just like stop
completely in
motion.
a league in their own as well. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's really nice to see. Especially as someone who like really appreciates classic animation, stop motion, stuff like that. It was really cool to see the different takes on this and just kind of expanding Star Wars away. I mean, Charlie and I joked last time, God, I just want Star Wars the anime now, and so many of those I wanted, but
I still do.
I got it. And I still do, but I did feel like, and we'll talk about this in a second. A lot of these, I was just like, all right, I'm ready for 10 seasons. Like, let's get started.
Yeah.
Like it was a great time. So, um, let's pop into the first one. I wanted to talk about this one. The first one it was just called Sith. It was from El Giri Studios, or if I'm saying that wrong, I should have looked pronunciations because there's a lot of different.
Real Yuri.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but anyways, um, first of all, the art style in this, we'll talk about that.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
not to get
it.
too into the specifics on this, I want to talk pretty generally about each episode and about my overall thoughts on Visions. This is a pretty light episode, but I really appreciated the art style in this. It was like this. I mean, the whole thing was kind of had this motif of paint. So
Right.
there was all this like brush stroke work into the animation that gave it this really unique appeal. Um, it was almost kind of like in a way a blend between, like, it was like a painted comic book. It was like Into the Spider Verse is what it reminded me the most of as I was watching it. So I really liked it. I like this kind of take, as we kind of talked about the different things with the Force. This Sith reminded me a lot of like I said, the motif was paint art,
Yeah.
and it was basically a visual portrayal of emotion. She's leaving in black in her wake as she is anxious, she's fearful, and in the end, the message was about balance. It was about painting with all colors and all strokes, and I think it was a really unique way to kind of show how a gray could be portrayed, as it's like, no, 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 the galaxy needs to breathe through
Yeah.
everything. You wouldn't paint with just one set of color. So, although I can't say I was really happy with like the plot of it, I found it that interesting as a short story. I thought it was a little bit mediocre compared to some of the other ones. I thought the art style was absolutely in a league of its
Yeah.
own. Not that it's the best and it looked the most amazing, but it was just one of the most interesting things I've seen in a long time.
Yeah. It was incredibly unique. I love the use of the paint as kind of her analog in her interaction with the Force. I love how it reflects that, like, basically without the light there is no dark. Like, I love how all of that is reflected, how she realizes, like you mentioned, the balance. I think like that conclusion is super satisfying in terms of the interpretation of the Force. It's like, and that's like some of the stuff I love the most in the High Republic and some of the recent Star Wars stuff, when people talk about, how they view the Force and like what it means to those specific characters. Like we just did Path of Deceit, and uh our boy Kevmo was talking about how it feels like the sunlight. And then
I'm
when
still in mourning,
Obi-Wan
Charlie.
talks about it, he's like, if you're afraid of the dark, it feels like connecting to the Force feels like the light, like it feels comforting and soothing. And then, we have, like we see on Kashyyyk, like the Wookiees with the trees and how they connect. And then we have like Avar Kriss in the High Republic talking about how music is a part of her connection to the Force. And I love all these interpretations, and I think this art one, like this painting one, is definitely like another one of my favorite interpretations of it.
You can't say it's anything but unique. It
Yeah,
paints a picture that is not just this ironically black and white dichotomy that we get through all of this. You're dealing in color, so I really love
yeah,
that. I love the use of like a lot of times, especially that we've seen in Visions, because you just have the common things you're dealing with. You got green, you got blue, you got red. Those are your lightsabers, and I
yeah,
liked them using the yellow or orange color palette on that too for her lightsaber. It's a little bit more ambiguous, and then having that double-sided lightsaber at the end was a cool touch. So
yeah,
I'm definitely a fan of the creativity on this. Wasn't as much of a fan of what was going on, but I think this was
yeah,
more a display of the studio's animation quality more than anything else.
Yeah. And like I would agree. I think the story pretty much suffices. I like what's there. But it wasn't like this amazing, awe-inspiring concept, but the animation was, and that makes
Right. If this
the
was on
difference for it.
Netflix, you'd be pretty happy with it. I mean, if this was
Yeah.
fleshed out in the 30 minutes, there's some stuff, and from a writing perspective, that it just kind of jumps from place to place.
Place.
But it was interesting.
Yeah.
So,
Also,
I
I
think,
love the droid design.
yeah, E2. E2
Yeah.
had really cool design. I mean, I liked the design of all the characters. Even the Master looked awesome. The Sith Master.
Yeah.
It was really cool.
Also, I
I was just gonna say
appreciate.
visually,
Go ahead. Yeah.
everything looked good in this. Yeah,
Yeah.
visually everything looked good. It's just the only nitpicks I have is just I didn't enjoy the story. I wouldn't watch it again.
Yeah. Uh, Literally the only reason I've rewatched that one specifically is because it looks so good, and I have this really nice 4K TV where I'm like, okay, I gotta, because I watched it on my monitor first, and I was like, okay, that one I'm gonna go back and rewatch.
No,
But
I respect it.
uh, I totally agree with you. I do appreciate the departure of like the fucking gaslighting Sith Lord trope, where he's
Yeah,
like, "Oh, you will become more evil," and she's like, "No, but I don't. I'm not gonna deal with you. This evil man chasing me."
yeah, it was just it kind of was there. I mean, the plot didn't
Yeah,
have to be anything specific, like we said. So yeah,
yeah,
I enjoyed it. It was fun. Would I want another season of it? If it, I know none of these are gonna get that, but like, no,
never say
wasn't
never,
really.
but yeah,
I wasn't really interested.
yeah,
Which is the next one, Screecher's Reach, much more interesting,
yeah,
in my opinion. Uh, for background, this is created by Cartoon Saloon. It's an Irish animation studio, and I mean, man, what can I say about this other than it literally like it felt like Star Wars had met a classic Irish fairy tale. It felt like some Neil Gaiman Stardust mixed into Star Wars. Like it was insanely cool. I really liked it, and I think they have this like perfect art style that's so just like it's so fairy tale. You can't not think about a children's cartoon or a children's fantasy series when you look at it. So I was really impressed with this one in terms of visuals. I'm sure you probably feel the same.
yeah,
Maybe not as much as some others, but I thought it was absolutely gorgeous. I thought it was honestly, I thought it was extraordinary. I loved the tale of it. It kept me
yeah.
on. I
I
was literally
love
so
the
engrossed in
twist.
this. Yeah, the twist at the end. You got the ghost who's really just kind of this Sith woman who's
Yeah, this
kind of
banshee.
bringing back yeah, the banshee, right? It's from Irish folklore. And but you're dealing with it in the sense of like, oh, it's just a woman who's force screaming, which is something that exists in Star Wars. um but I loved the ending not being this like black and white, like, oh, I feel good about this. It was ambiguous. You're like, there's this misplaced hope going on. She's
Yep.
getting off this planet, but you're like 99% sure she's going with a Sith Lord.
Yeah, and I love how, in relation to like a lot of, in throughout the season, a lot of the like young protagonists seem to go off with a Jedi. I love that the first way we see that trope really in this one is them seeing going with, I guess, essentially a Sith.
She was evil. I felt it. I felt it
Yeah,
in my bones.
she's definitely dark side. I mean, and I don't think it necessarily matters. I mean,
But and I think it's interesting because like when you talk about this style of writing, something my wife is really into Irish folklore, things like that, and a lot of the stories she's inspired by, and even like her writing, I will say, like this felt like, oh, she's going into the land of the Fae. Like she's going into the world of the
yeah,
fairies after this. Like she was going off into space somewhere completely different where she couldn't just come back and have this mundane life. And it was, yeah, I just found myself like it ended and I was like, wow, I want more.
yeah,
I loved
and
the characters. I loved everything about it. It was so engrossing from start to finish. I loved this just like it opened in like this Dr. Seuss storybook view where it's just like all these
yeah,
characters in the background and you're
in
zooming up
this
and up
like
and up and up.
factory that's like, oh, look at this, like I mean, realistically, it's like a labor camp, but
Yeah. Yeah, this is Star Wars. It's an Imperial labor camp. We know it.
yeah. But like they give us this whole like yeah, I would say like basically like a Seussical kind of vibe from like the outro, and then we focus on our characters that I just love throughout.
Yeah,
I love that they're
there's
going on their
so many
own little
parts.
adventure. Like it's really starts off like kind of like the genuine innocent thing, and then that the way it just goes is so unexpected, and that's what I like about it.
Yeah. I mean, I was pretty impressed with this. I think it definitely like some of these really eat and breathe where they're from, and there's a lot of cultural impact onto it. And I think this was so it was one of the few times where I liked how not Star Wars this felt, where it's
Yeah.
like you could take the entire idea out of the Jedi of this and I'd still watch it. Like
Right.
it was so it was so good. It was so cool. So I was really happy with it.
Yeah.
It's sad because I just don't have a ton to say about it or discuss about it. I'm like, it's good. I like it. It was fun.
It,
Like
it,
it was good to
it's
watch.
beer. It's good now.
Yeah, it was great visually. It was a great story. It was a super good time. I would watch it again. Is it like a
Yeah.
10 out of
I
10? No, it's
do.
like an 8 out of 10
Yeah.
kind of piece.
One thing I do want to talk about, I love that she's like holding on to this confidence. She's like, "Oh, it's not real. You just have to like believe." Basically, like very much just a lot closer to like the Jedi versus the Sith of like just hold on to like hope.
Right, but it
And
was strength.
yeah, and then she ends up just killing this person, which is very
Yeah.
not that,
Yeah,
because
and
she's convinced it wasn't real, and then she's like, "Oh, that's a real person," and she's like, "I guess I have to."
yeah, they use I mean, it's a short film, right? So we're dealing with short stories and like there's not a lot of talking about what's going on. We are just assuming obviously that this was a dark side like this was an
Yeah,
evil or a dark force user at the end who takes her in the master. Simply because,
red.
the the amulet turns red. She has this deep eerie speaking voice. She has this angelic looking ship, but it's outlined in all this red and black. And for a moment, you're like, "Oh, this is a good guy." And you're like, "No,
No.
no, it's not."
Yeah,
So I really think they did a lot with very little, and I was just super happy with it.
agreed.
Really hard not to talk about anything. Like the only thing that kind of like stuck out to me, like I said, was in all of this, in all of Star Wars, we get a lot about hope, right?
Yeah,
Hope is an underlying message, and hope is an underlying message in a lot of stories, right? Like hope is something somebody can cling on to, but Star Wars is always kind of there's a tragedy, a calamity, something going on that we need to have the Force to have hope for, family, friends to have hope for, and this was about misplaced hope. It
yep,
felt like to me, it was she was following this, and it kept her alive this view, but inherently this drive to go out and test herself
yeah,
is what put her friends in danger. This, it took her from her homeland,
yeah.
you know,
And I
and we'll
think
never know if that was the right decision or not. And that's to me the perfect ending to that story.
yeah, and I think what's really great about it is that I think it reflects it kind of like her attitude kind of reminds me of like a young Anakin who very much wants to go out and see the galaxy. Like I kind of got that same vibe from her where she's like, I need to get out of here. No matter what, I need to leave here. Which, is a relatable thing. but
Yeah,
um
100%.
but the way she's going about it is seemingly it doesn't seem to be the best way to go about it. And it kind of reminds me of like the Yoda quote where he's like, "Oh, adventure? A Jedi seeks not these things," or whatever.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Well, anything else to say about that one? That's really all I've got. I mean,
yeah,
it's hard to say anything other than I really liked it.
agreed. Screecher's Reach was pretty darn good.
Oh yeah, 100%. Well, we can move on. Let's talk about In the Stars. This one was made by Punk Robot, a Chilean studio. What
Yeah.
were your thoughts on this one, Charlie?
This is actually one of my favorites. And which is apparently is a divisive opinion to have of this season. But what I really love about this one is kind of like, I mean, I like these characters. I like these this kind of like blind hope of like the younger child versus the older one who has seemingly had to have a very rough time surviving, especially since their mom and seemingly their whole community is gone. And what I love the most about it though is like this like commentary on like imperialism and colonialism that's within this one. Like it's very trenched in that where it's like the empire's here, they are, extracting natural resources, they are commodifying the existence of the land and to, get money.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the interesting things about this is we've been seeing this focus a lot more lately, of let's explore more of the imperialism for the empire,
Yeah.
more of destroying and like sapping the resources, destroying planets, committing genocide, like actually like exploring topics through Star Wars rather than just like good versus evil.
Yeah.
Let's have an ambiguous conversation, which is a lot of like what Andor does well. You're dealing with a series that is talking about darker topics in this that aren't just rooted in the Jedi. And that is
Yeah.
what I liked about this is the Star Wars universe. Star Wars has a general motif about hope, um, the future, doing the right thing. And this took that route without having to use really the force in the way that we would see it normally through the Jedi.
Right.
It was more about like, oh, this is the native people of this planet. This is their gift. This is where their strength comes from. They didn't really talk about, hey, this is where, oh, we're going to call it the Force and it does X, Y, and Z. They just said, oh, this is being strong. You kind of got the idea that this was just normal in their culture. And I loved the kind of environmentalist message of this. I loved the bonding of the two sisters and kind of fleshing out that relationship. It's something we don't see a lot in like that siblings
Yeah.
relationship a lot in Star Wars. So I think my favorite thing about this is it went in such a different direction than anything else. It had a beautiful story about loss and familial love and getting there in the end. But it was just at the end of the day, it was gorgeous.
Yeah.
It looked like nothing I'd ever seen before.
Yeah,
In full
and this kind of
transparency.
animation is like it's so up my alley. So it's like this is the commentary I love entrenched with like animation that I really really dig. So having just like that combination
Yeah, it's
just
like
hits so well
almost
for me.
full claymation. It's so stylized. It looks so well, and we can talk about how it was visually a ton. But the one thing that just sticks out about this was, you know, one, the Force was more of a tool to bring life back to the way it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
That's kind of what they were using it for. The Force was used in line with nature or for nature.
Yeah.
Um, but at the end of the day, I just like that this took risks. It was different from anything else I'd seen in Star Wars. Do I want to see a whole season of it like I've been saying for everything else? No, because this was a perfectly wrapped story, start to
Agreed.
finish. You don't need anything else. It was clean. It was great to watch. I recommend to go watch it if you haven't. I it was just great. It was a good time. I really liked exploring this side of the empire. Other than just like, hey, there's always a genocide going on. There's always suffering. It's like, well, how do we return life back to normal and then celebrate what we had before?
Right.
That was the hope, right? That was the happy ending.
Yeah.
Was they were still alone, but they could be alone with the fact that they knew they had restored things back to what their ancestors had wanted, and that was just such a cool way to go that we've never seen in Star Wars.
I completely agree and I could have not said that better myself. Um and I also like I've mentioned before with like, I love when we get these like cultural interpretations of like the Force specifically,
Mhm.
where for them the Force is, like for them like the stars was like a heavy part of it. Where I always bring up like the Wookiees and the trees on Kashyyyk because that's like the obvious one, but I love like we even got that in Visions with the Village Bride. That was the one you loved where they had
Mhm.
like the way the Force operated on that planet.
So good.
Yeah, and I've been really appreciating that a lot more in recent Star Wars work.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a lot more serious than the next one we're going to talk about.
Yeah,
And
the disparity between these two.
yeah, it was kind of nice to go from like, oh, we got this environmental message, and kind of like, oh, it's going to make you kind of cry story, and then it's just fucking Wallace and Gromit.
It's literally, yeah, you
Yeah,
know.
so episode 4 was I Am Your Mother, which great call out.
Yeah.
Very funny from the beginning. It's done by Aardman Studios, which is it's from the UK. It's the studio who's made all the Wallace and Gromit films.
Chicken Run.
Yeah, Chicken Run, Flushed Away, like ton of great stuff. This one's like just kind of lighthearted. Like I literally was writing in my notes, like looks like Wallace and Gromit meet Star Wars, and I looked it up and I was like, never mind, it
It
literally
really
is.
is.
I wrote that in, I was just hilarious. It was a great classic story. I loved all the little nods. This was just one of those things where like they have the evil family, like I can't remember their names, but they were like the bad guys of the story. The villains of the story is like the rich people who are
Yeah,
being put down.
they're just some posh assholes.
Yeah, yeah. But they had a mini. Did you notice that
Mini
their
Death
laser
Star.
there was a mini Death Star? They were firing at people. Like there were so many fun nods.
The
Um,
Mantis was there.
and it's funny because yeah, there was so much hilarious stuff. That just like classic nods, and
The
it was
bra.
just yeah, start to finish. Yeah, the bra. There's so much like start to finish comedy, but there was also start to finish like, hey, this is not really about Star Wars. Like we're just kind of using Star Wars to talk about a mom, a mom and daughter scenario. Like,
Yeah,
you kind of get the feeling that this is a single mom taking care of her kid. The classic like my mom's embarrassing me story. Like it was super well done. I literally teared up at
yeah,
the end because it was just so genuine and so heartfelt. And genuinely, that's what Wallace and Gromit does really well in some of their stuff. Like it's very funny and then it's somehow poignant. That's what they do in a lot of their animation stuff where it's just kind of like you're laughing and then it gets you at some point.
yep. I
I just
entirely agree.
I thought this was a really fun time. I can't really say a ton about it because it was just an experience. It was fun to watch. It was funny.
Yeah, it's like,
And
having a conversation about like I don't know, like a Looney Tunes or a Tom and Jerry episode where it's
yeah,
just kind of
yeah.
like you're
It
like,
was
that was fun.
it was
I
like a
like
Sunday
that.
cartoon, not everything needs to be this big
Yeah.
sweeping narrative. Like we were enjoying all the little nods, like Wedge Antilles having his own like
Yeah.
um
Flight Academy,
competition,
yeah.
Flight Academy. It was so commercialized. There's so much fun stuff happening in the background. It was going from like the Sith Screecher's Reach in the stars to this. It was like because I watched this all in one
Yeah, the
sitting.
total shift is just
It was
so
such a total shift. And I was like, oh, good, like a good like warm blanket, and I can move on to the next one. So I was super happy.
yeah, I don't have too much to say on this one. Um yeah, like we said, it's just I think the warm blanket's like the perfect way to describe it. I was surprised just cuz I haven't watched Wallace and Gromit or any of those movies like Flushed Away or Chicken Run in over 10 years. Where I was like, "Oh, neat. We'll see how that is." And I was like, "Nope, they're still funny. They're still good."
Yeah, I'm totally glad I went into this blind because I think part of it was not like expecting like, oh my god, this is Wallace and Gromit, and it essentially was.
Yeah.
But like, there was no fat on the story. Like everything was used in the end with the mom
Yeah.
repairing Z1, and he's got this extension cable.
That's the
And it's
only thing
strapped
that
over the
bothers me is that they call it Z1.
Yeah, they call it Z. Well, yeah, it's. I appreciate that they're. 'Cause Star Wars is kind of like uses this weird like they have all these English accents for their characters, but then they say things as an American would. It's very weird.
Yeah.
It's very weird. So it did jump out to me
Yeah.
because they would always say Z for most editions rather than Z. So I just thought that I did notice that as well.
Yeah, that's basically the only thing, and that's just I like being a hater.
Yeah, but they're like it's their
Yeah, it's
decision to do
literally
so.
English.
It honestly bothers me that they say that, but the rest of Star Wars doesn't. When
Doesn't?
like
Yeah.
every human has a fucking is either Bill Burr or has a
Well,
has
yeah,
a
how
fucking English
everyone's
accent.
like talk what's like everyone, like all the ships, it's like A wing, Y wing, X wing, V wing, and then it's just like, oh yes, but everyone writes in Arabesh. But even though English does exist in Star Wars, I think it's like High Galactian or something silly.
Galactic Basic, whatever.
Yeah, well they speak basic, and then there's something about it, but they
Otherwise,
have
we're
an
getting out the
excuse to
wheel.
write normal English in Star Wars.
Yeah, but anyways, like it was just a good time. That's all
Yeah,
it comes down to it. I probably rewatched this one. I'm not gonna lie, it was just fun.
yeah.
Let's talk about something I am most certainly going to rewatch. I want to talk about Charity to the Dark Head. This is by Studio. I don't know if it's Mir, MIR. Um, South Korean animation studio. They did The Legend of Korra. They also did a season of The Boondocks, the world's greatest anime.
I
And
love Boondock so much.
dude, okay, I'm gonna talk so much about this. So I just want to hear
Good.
you talk about this first.
No, you go ahead. Just
Okay,
dive
cool.
right in.
Dude, first of all, this was like disgustingly gorgeous. It was
So
just
good.
so good to look at. It was so beautiful, and I am blessed to have a 4K TV. And I was just like leaning in off my couch, my sectional, just like, oh my god, there's so much color, there's so much brightness. It just looks so good,
The
and
contrast is
I
like
was literally just sitting here. I'm like, why doesn't all Star Wars look like this?
I said the same thing, my guy.
Just start to finish, there's no fat on this story, which basically when I say that, I'm just saying like they don't leave anything for chance. There's not a lot of stuff that's just like, oh, this is a throwaway
It's
line.
very
Like
direct.
everything matters from start to finish, and the beginning starts on this planet, where this woman is, I should have written down her name. I was too focused on how good it looked. She is essentially like part of this kind of, I don't want to say cult, but
It's religion. It's a
this religious group.
ritualistic sort of
This ritualistic religious group. Hey, the stones are falling on. When it rains onto
force
these
and Prince
stones, and you
visions
can
on
see,
them. Yeah.
yeah, the forest imprints visions, and it was like, oh, she saw her own vision from start to end. It was really well written. You're like, God, that was cool. You have everything going on with the Jedi. Oh, he fights the guy who killed his master because the Sith is convinced. I think his name is Bacano. I don't know why I remember the Sith's name, but no one else. Bacano.
Yeah.
Bacano's convinced he's going to change this guy, and it's just like, start to finish, it's like, why do you need a parachute and bombs? Like the merchant's asking that, and then you're wondering by the end, oh, whatever happened to the parachute? Oh, he's going to use it to save him because he fell all this way. Like, I was just super happy with how everything got used. It didn't feel like a short story. Like I felt like I could have been sitting there 30, 45 minutes. Just so much happened.
Yeah.
But man, God,
Like I
just
can't get over
so
how good it
good.
is. And this is like we've been saying, where last season we were talking about whether or not, like, I'm like, I want a full season of this.
Yeah, out of everything we've watched so far in both seasons, both volumes, whatever you want to call them, this is it. Hands down. I want this. Actually, I want these characters because the dynamic was fantastic.
Yeah, it was really
Um,
good. As
I
much as
have
I
to,
love Ninth Jedi,
yeah, this
I'm
is
I'm obsessed with that
awesome.
still, but
And the thing I liked about this is, again, all of these kind of have to do. Let's use Star Wars to tell our own story, or like if we're going to use the Jedi, let's explore the Force in a unique way. And for this, like the kind of idea was balance is this pool, like balance the Force. It's not just like this war, this head-to-head match. It's the tide coming in and out. And with the tide, yeah, it's always going to come back, and it's always going to go forth. But with that, the tide carries some things in, it brings it out to sea, it pushes some things up. There's this constant change that's going on, and that is what we're seeing here. Is the Jedi having to come to the conclusion that, like, I need to be okay with the fact that the world is going towards the Sith. The Sith are winning because eventually the Sith will lose. And I
right,
just need to, you have to be in the fight, be a part of the Force and its push and its pull. You have to go with it because that's the only way to stay with it. And I was like, just so gorgeous.
right.
There's so many allegories about water and rain and the weather. It's very naturalistic, even though that's not what the story's about. Like, it was just so perfect.
Yeah.
Like, if you would have told me this was created by a Japanese studio and it was super like, it felt very much that like focus on nature that's common in Japanese animation. Like, I so good, Charlie. It was just so good. It's
Yeah.
hard not to say it.
Oh, so good.
I just like I want more, Charlie. It's hard not to say I want anything more than that.
Yeah. Also, like, what I really do, another thing, like, a small thing that I love about this is, like, it plays into how you've talked about that, like, the Jedi's approach. I really love that, like, they understand that the Sith exists, but they don't let that, like, dictate everything that's happening, per se.
Right. The point of being a part of being a Jedi is not to pursue and destroy the Sith. It's to be there for the galaxy.
Right, exactly.
It's funny that we can talk so much about what is like a 15-20 minute episode. There's not much going on, but they did so much with so little.
Yeah.
You
Also, the
know,
Sith design in this, like,
oh my god,
the stab
this
through
little
the...
scorpion tail and
It's
like
crazy.
disgusting,
I love it.
wild, crazy. I just,
What murder?
Yeah, it was so cool. So, yeah, the Jedi's name is Toll. Bakan was the Sith Lord. It was great, man. Ara was the pilot. Those were the main characters.
Yeah,
I would
Ara's
love
great.
to see. I'd love to see Ara and Toll just going around the galaxy, on their own little missions.
I love their dynamic, their bickering. It's great.
And if you look up the art to this, I'm just saying, if you look up the cover art for this,
Oh,
it literally looks like the most fire anime is about to drop on Netflix. Like the coolest and Netflix original. It reminded me a lot of like when we saw the Castlevania
Oh, yeah.
art for the first time, and you're like, this is gonna be good. Like,
Yep. I distinctly remember that. I distinctly was watching.
which is not technically an anime, but you know what I mean. Like,
it is, isn't it? Yeah, it is.
I mean, that's contentious. I mean, anime just means
anime. It literally just means cartoon. That's why King of the Hill is one of the most popular anime in Japan, but no one wants to talk about that.
Yeah, it's honestly the best anime ever, but that's a whole other thing. Next week, tune in to our new King of the Hill podcast that Charlie and I are doing.
I would love to.
I've watched so much of that show. Anyways, let's not get into that. Oh man, yeah. I just my final notes on this. I love the fact that we were able to get gorgeous animation, a great story, see so many new ideas about in Star Wars about what could be technologically, what things would look like. And in the end, we are delivered with what I find one of the most compelling messages about what the Force could be in all of Star Wars. And ironically, some of the best depictions of the Force that I have seen lately have been from things that the majority of people who consume Star Wars content will never see, which is this and the way Kevmo talks about the Force.
Yeah.
In the Path of Deceit, which irks me to no end, that like this just small little world of content, like there is just this beauty out there. And that might be one of the most fun things about doing this podcast, to be honest with you, is re-exploring and redefining our relationship with content that we have been consuming since we were children. And it is things like this, it is projects like this that define why people should still be making Star Wars content. If you want to tell me that we can't still be making Star Wars content, I urge you to watch this. I urge you to read The Path of Deceit. I urge you to watch Visions, Andor, Obi-Wan, and sit here and go, there is not enough to say. We're done. Let's pack up.
Yeah. Especially with like the commentary with Andor when we get to those episodes. It's gonna be... There was a reason why I was debating like doing multiple episodes.
Yeah, and we'll see when we get there. But my larger point is just I it is a blessing to be able to do this kind of stuff, and I really love just getting to consume this content, and it is a
Yeah.
great time to be a Star Wars fan. I thought my days were made when I was playing the Star Wars Bounty Hunter games, and although I still love that game to no end, I still love the Force Unleashed and all those games that we got when we were
Yeah,
kids.
me just playing
Now,
Battlefront 2 for hundreds of hours.
yeah, now we just get the greatest, like, coolest content to explore now. So I couldn't
Yeah,
be happier.
that was
Well,
very well said.
let's move on because I could just keep talking. And unfortunately, we're gonna move on to
Well, good thing we
another
have a
one.
whole show for that.
Yeah. Good thing the good thing is I really like the next one. The bad thing is I'm gonna talk about this a lot.
I love the
Uh,
Spite Answer. It's so good.
the Spite Answer. So this is French.
I was
Um,
expecting to hate this when it started.
oh no, when it started, it was gorgeous from the beginning. I literally knew the only
I'm
thing
just
that
a
caught me
French
at the beginning.
hater.
Oh yeah, you're an American, as you should be. Freedom fries, right?
Yeah,
Um,
oldest ally, right? No.
yeah. Jesus. Um, the very first thing I remember seeing when I watched this was you've got the big buff stormtrooper and the other stormtrooper, the skinnier guy. Who these are like kind of pivotal characters in this. They're kind of mentioned as they go to this theater, whatever you want to call this. Um, and I was like, this kind of looks ugly at first, but as soon as we move into the next scene, we get into this kind of performance hall. It is like watching a dream. Literally, it's just like something I dreamt about has been transplanted on the screen. Absolutely gorgeous. It does not look like anything I've ever seen. Which after kind of looking up Studio La Cachette's cachet, whatever. I don't speak French, but look them up. Looking up the art that they do, it is utterly gorgeous and so unique. Like I kind of just want to go look up half this stuff because it is the most unique art style I've ever seen. And here we like, obviously I said some pretty similar things about In the Stars, but this is just so cool to look at. It's like classic animation, fairy tale animation, but on the other
Yeah.
side, it kind of looks like something you've never seen about. Um, it looks like something you dreamt, like a cartoon you dreamt of. But there's just so much personality in this, so much emotion. Um, in a way, it kind of reminded me of like a World War II movie.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
I fully agree with that. And I don't, maybe it's just because it's in France, but,
but you're dealing with
Empire occupying is a little
yeah, they were
parallel.
occupied. They lost their family, and in the end, although the story wasn't about the Force, it was kind of this idea that
Connection
so
and
in
family. And
connection, family, but also this very integral idea to Star Wars that any shred of hope is enough.
yes.
And the fact in like giving her son in the end a tracker, and he may or may not have known. We're not privy to that. It's kind of left ambiguous.
Yeah, intentionally.
They can find each other. There's a shred of hope that maybe her son will come to the reason that he is her son, that he is not to be, he can leave the empire, maybe redeemed. I was just sitting there, I'm like, okay, this feels like a World War II movie that I have not watched enough of. I know where's the next hour and a half? Like,
Agreed. I was like,
I
I want to know. Like, I know it's
it,
probably one of those things where it will be left ambiguous, and it's that's kind of the point. But I want to see it. I want to know more about this little spy network we got going on. Where do they
it
go from here? What was it like before? There's so many questions.
yeah, I think the biggest thing with this is, watching this, it just makes you appreciate animation. It was gorgeous. They were doing so much with movement. She was fighting with, this flow, essentially dancing and fighting at the same time. And
Yeah, it
she's
was
pulling
great.
these ribbons of cloth around people, whipping them around. Her apprentice is doing the same. It was just visually flowing beautifully from end to end, even in the fight scenes. There was so much intrigue and suspense. and you're left with all of this, and it just feels like a movie. It really did. It was written out beat for beat, like it was just going to keep going, and you're just dropped off and left, and you get this feeling at the end that, well, I can't watch, but somewhere out there this story goes on.
Right.
There's something kind of ethereal about this, and that's hard to do. That's
Yeah.
hard to do.
And I love that that was a twist. She was totally expecting it to be the guy that took her son.
And it was her son 20 years later. Like,
Yeah.
oh, oh.
It was it was so good. I was so shocked by that when that happened. I loved also just like I love the pacing of this one where it's like it's using this to like kind of build tension throughout till we get to this scene while still being this kind of like fantastical visual impression. Also, can we just talk about how the stormtroopers just kind of take their helmets off and they're just like kind of go sit in like this over extravagant like building?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of cool to like kind of get a feeling for these stormtroopers and like the lives. They're still people too, you know. It kind of, and I think that was part of it. It was like it humanized the Empire a little bit. Like
Yeah,
the Empire is this just ever moving um complex,
right.
but there's still people in it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
And
I
those people
just
can always change. Like that's there's always the ability to for change, and that's something we've talked about in the past few episodes. Something I brought up with like the Inferno Squadron character and like Luke Skywalker when they go to like that. I guess not like a temple, but it's like an empire's the emperor's like hidden room that you need the force to open. And then he was like, why do I have that? But he's like, why'd you save me? But he's like, you have the choice to be better every day. Like, and I think that's like, this guy can basically, like her son, she kind of gave him the opportunity to put the onus on him to like, he can leave the empire if he really wants to. And he's in
yeah.
like this nice officer position. He's not just a stormtrooper. Like, he has like, it kind of in a similar way to oh shoot, who am I blanking on? The guy from Rebels that defects.
Oh yeah.
Where he kind of has this ability to Agent Callus, yeah, the
Mhm.
ability to get out of that sort of situation, at least temporarily. So I really love like that she kind of pushes that onto him, and that he very much wants to, like, he wants to learn more. So
Yeah, 100%. Well, cool.
alrighty, so I think that means we should take it to the next one.
Yeah, I think we said all we wanted to say. It's hard, like, when some of these are just like pretty much just visually beautiful, and that's
Yeah.
really all it was supposed to be. Is just highlighting how good that studio was. It's like, okay, loved it, great
Yep.
to watch, great to look at. Let's move on. Like,
Yep.
which I think the Bandits of Galak was not that. I'll let you talk about this because I have a little bit more of a, I would say, kind of controversial opinion on this one. So I
I
will let
love
you.
Bandits of Golok so fucking much. You don't even.
Why? What do you love about it?
Honestly, I just love like. Okay, when we talked about a little bit before the show, I do think a lot of your critiques are fair. However, when I was watching it, I very much got kind of like the similar opinion of like I got that same feeling when I watched like new Star Wars stuff for the first time. Like especially like the animated stuff, like I know you said it's very close to like the Clone Wars or Bad Batch animation, which is true. And that can be a fault. But I love this relationship between this little sister and older brother. He's like trying to take care of her, trying to keep it a secret, but she's young, she's ornery. I love the badass old woman. I love the setting. I love the Inquisitor that's based off a god. um it's just like I feel like it's so nice to get something that's so like you watch this and you can tell it's very Indian. Like it feels nice that to think that there's just other planets in Star Wars that are so different, because like how many like sand planets do we have where it's like, oh yeah, but all the people still sound the same, and there's still Jawas running around because it's Star Wars, and would you look at that, oh wow, they scavenge, wow. But I loved how just unique this felt. I love that the Empire was going over the top when he stole the candy to just like get their attention away from his sister.
Yeah.
And I love how it kind of like Loki kind of plays into the path, which is or the hidden path. So
Yeah. It
that'll
was it was definitely evocative of a lot of the things we're seeing in Star Wars right now with dealing with well, yeah, the hidden path. I think it did
Inquisitors.
Inquisitors, it inherently looked like a Disney film. I mean, pretty much people have confirmed in side by side photos that like they used assets. There's some characters that are
Yeah,
identical to what they were in the Clone Wars. So I can see they probably gave them some assets to run with this.
yeah,
I'm not sitting here being like they stole from Disney because Disney produced it. Like that's just not how this works, right?
yeah,
Um it was hard for me because like it was kind of jarring to have that style that was so close to Star Wars
yeah,
content we've already seen. And I think part of
yeah.
that
Also,
is
with like
because
30 Terra Sanubes in the background.
yeah, that's what someone said. Yeah, there was like eight of them in one scene. But for me, it was just the fact that I'm like, I've gone through a lot of these, and I shouldn't compare this to other ones, but you know, when I'm watching, you know, Journey to the Dark Head, Screecher's Reach, In the Stars, like I'm just sitting here and I'm like, yeah, watch that again, not this. But that being said, the Inquisitor was awesome. It was an amazing premise. It was a little bit choppy, a little bit confusing at times in terms of the pacing and the story, but this was so unique. It took a culture that we have not seen implanted into Star Wars
At all.
and at all, and did it in such a beautiful and seamless way that you felt that this had always been in Star Wars all along. Like it was just so well done. Like I just enjoyed how much they took their culture and put it into Star Wars, made it happen,
Yeah,
made it feel like this was a real place, and it was just really cool, really beautiful. I mean, I'm not gonna say that this was like didn't have emotional beats that were strong. The ending is just beautiful in the most sad way, and like you said, it's evocative of the hidden path, but it's also dealing with this goodbye that we haven't really gotten a lot of in Star Wars. It's a lot of what we get is this person said goodbye before. Now, oh, I never met my parents, or I've got to leave Shmi on
yeah,
Tatooine. And then but this was just a simple like, okay, this is the way it's going to be. I love you. I was willing to do a lot for you, especially on that train, like putting my neck out there. And somehow this is harder, right? It's
right.
harder for him. You can tell it's harder for him to let go of her than it was to risk his life for her. And that is a beautiful thing to feel from a story. It
I
really is.
agree.
Was it the most beautiful? Was it the coolest? Was it the most unique in terms of visuals? No,
No.
but it was definitely culturally a lot different. Something we haven't seen in Star Wars. I love the premise.
Yeah.
I loved the fight. It was choppy at first, but super fun, super
Yeah.
cool. A lot more fluid than what we would see in the Clone Wars, in Rebels, in Bad Batch. It was a lot more fluid than what its kind of contemporaries would be. So I really liked it.
Yeah.
Am I the biggest fan? No, I'm not. I really
Yeah.
wouldn't say I would watch this, or I'm saying, hey, give me a sequel to this. I want to see more. But I'm happy it exists.
Yeah. I think this one kind of does suffer from the thing that it's like it feels so much like a setup, right? And it's like
Yeah,
I genuinely want to see where this goes, but it's also like this is a small little part where it's like if you were just told me it was like, yeah, there's a book about like this kid and what's going on here, I'd be like, cool, I'll read it, you know? But it's not like a thing where I'm like, oh my god, that was amazing. I was just like, yeah, I'm the guy who wakes up at, like 6 a.m. before work and goes and watch Bad Batch when that was on. Of course I'm
Yeah.
going to love this. I'm going to love, you know, seeing what's going on. I love how this just kind of adds it into Star Wars of like the Indian representation, and how that just kind of goes into the culture of this one planet. And it's like, I would love to see like these characters come back, or like this planet just exist in some other form of Star Wars medium in the future. Like, it does a lot in terms of like, I guess kind of like, I don't want to say world building because Star Wars is always that, but it gives me this like setting that it's like I want to spend more time figuring out what's going on over here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think we kind of knocked this one out. Is there anything else you want to talk about with this one?
Not particularly. Super cool designs. I love that weird that one guy kept getting mad at the same other person for like hitting him with stuff when all like the force antics were going on. I like the little lighthearted beats there. Really just kept hitting him, but it was that guy that was he's in Andor and he's in Rogue One. He's that big silly looking dude. I forget his name. Anyways,
Yeah.
yeah. We'll move
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. Let's I'm kind of hesitant to talk about this one.
The Pit.
The Pit. Of all of these, I enjoyed watching every single one. I kind of just eh.
I so thought
I
The
wanted
Pit
to
was
like
going
it.
to be more interesting than it was. It was just like depressing and ended with hope, and I was like, what was really like the message of this one?
So I looked up a piece about this from Lucasfilm's website talking about it. And I think this to me represents that sometimes like having a great idea is not enough.
Yeah.
And when you read it, it's just not that. I mean, this was based off of some journaling done by Thomas, the director. His name is where I just had it pulled up. Um, Leandre Thomas. Um, he directed this. He went through this, and he was talking about in this article on Lucasfilm's website that this is a story about oppression and hope, and you know it's about crawling out of this pit. And like he literally goes on to talk about like he remembers during the pandemic feeling that he was in that everybody was in, like, when all this cultural um uproar was going on through everything that's happened in the tension and politics in this country. It felt like you know he and his community were in a pit yelling, and no one could hear them as they're just yelling,
Yeah.
yelling from the bottom, and no one's paying attention for. And it's a great metaphor, and there's a lot going on, and then it's just boring.
Yeah, and here I felt like my biggest issue with this is that I feel like it played out far too simple. Like, it didn't really communicate much of a struggle. Like, I know that it was a struggle, but you didn't show me it was a struggle. We basically get this flash pan. These people dig a giant pit, which is somehow, food or nothing else has been a problem. Nobody thought to ever create any sort of stairs. And apparently all the tools are now broken. Like, I like the general idea of what's going on here. But, like,
It just kind of lives as a metaphor. It
yeah.
doesn't really hold up when you hold it as a
And,
story.
yeah. And it's like, I kind of agree. Like, in this instance, what happens? Oh, the person does get out of the pit. They go and tell people the government. Wow, the oppressive government silence and kills the person. Not surprising. But then for all the people to show up, and then that's just kind of the resolution of the story, is like, it's nice, but that seems for like 14 to 16 minutes of screen time. That's like not a lot is happening here.
Yeah, and I agree. It's one of those things where like everything, like you said, he says in this article sounds really good. It's a lot about it, and he's basically like at the end here in his notes, he says one of the attributes is to sense a disturbance. He's talking about the force, how everybody has it. People forget that we all have that ability. We know when something doesn't feel right. It's our intuition. That's a kind of real life force. It's
Yes.
something we pay attention to. Your conscious knows when something is wrong. And that's kind of where the
And
follow
I
the light
love
thing
that.
comes from. It's cool. It's a great idea. I thought it was very unique when I was watching it, and I was just expecting so much more to happen. You know,
Yeah.
it was sad all the way through, and then the resolution is kind of nothing. I mean, I was kind of nice when they're getting lifted out of this hole and they're being brought up, and kind of society is being healed after the empire is forced to leave. But it kind of, oh my god, it kindly reminds me of oh my gosh, was it Kylie Jenner
The
in
Pepsi
that
thing?
Pepsi? Yeah, the
Yeah.
Kylie Jenner
Guys,
Pepsi
they solved
commercial.
racism with soda. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, dude, like this feels like a lot of the times when we have these Star Wars projects, like one of the most common things.
It
I mean,
feels so unearned. I guess
we
that's
saw this
my
yeah, one of the things we saw in Obi-Wan, like there's always going to be the sympathizers, right? Like everybody's just mad at the Empire, like they didn't know the Empire was doing anything wrong, and then they're suddenly mad at the Empire, and then they fix everything. It's like that's just not how the real world works. I
it's so
get the point you're trying to
yeah.
come here. I really think this would have been a better Star Wars short story than it was an animated project. Flat and short.
Yeah, and it's like yeah. It was just so optimistic of like an ending. It's like what's that like World War II movie where there's the scene where they go up and they find like the internment camps and they have like this like oh my god what the fuck moment.
I know what you're talking about, but I
But
can't
it'd
remember
be
off the top
kind
of
of
my head.
like something like really terrible like that. Not to play light of the Holocaust or anything, but like
No,
something like that. And then you were like, and then no one was ever anti-Semitic again. The end. And it's like
right.
that's not how that worked, but
I mean, I think the ending was cool if we're talking about the very ending, where the young girl, she has this kyber crystal in her hand. It changes colors. It changes colors. It seemed almost like this Jedi prequel.
yeah,
I liked the idea if we're talking about the Force, this idea that the light is always there. We all have it within us.
us,
Because
yes,
even that's kind of if you look at the original trilogy, that's inherent about Darth Vader. Like, no, 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 you were a Jedi once, and there will always be a Jedi. The light can never be extinguished. It's just
you're
dim.
yeah, you basically choose to listen or not listen to it.
Right. And I like that about this story. And it's an awesome concept, an awesome project. And I love the animation. And then I love the little critter that's, boring a hole. Nature is helping him find his way, fate is helping
Yes,
him find his way. And I loved how diverse it was and how much it looked like, hey, it's not just a bunch of white people and aliens walking around the screen, which is what Star Wars used to be.
yeah,
And that's about it.
yeah,
The
and it's
story
like
was
I
not that
like a lot
fun.
of
It's
what's
not
here,
that
but just
interesting.
in as the sum of all of it, it's just the story just doesn't feel quite earned to me.
Yeah, 100%. I
And
think it's a great way to put it. It doesn't feel earned. It doesn't execute.
yeah, it's just it's like just watching like something. It's like if you watched like a resolution of like I don't know how a better way to put it, where it's just like it just seems like it's like oh yeah guys there was the struggle and then during history and now no one is ever bad again like
Yeah, I totally know what you're going for. It's this well, and then that was the end of it. Everyone clapped. The end, like almost like a fairy tale. And it's like, yeah, life's more complicated than that.
yeah
Um,
that's my
yeah,
biggest gripe with that. As much as I like everything else that is there and these themes that are inherent to Star Wars, it just comes off as but it makes sense. You would like to have more hope for humanity, but sometimes it don't be like that.
no, not at all. Let's move on to the next one. I don't want to beat a dead horse in the pit. I think we got our point across.
Yeah.
And this is one that again, it's it's going back to what does the Force mean? What does the Force look like? And that um is what I found so interesting about this one. So we're talking about Aoa's song. This is made by Triggerfish, which is a South African animation studio. I loved it.
I like it a
Uh,
lot.
it was
It's
it
so
was very
cute.
unique. It's very cute. I liked this like stop motion fuzzy characters. It very much had this light-hearted at first almost like kind of Wes Anderson vibe to it. But the biggest thing I loved about this story was, for most of the story, the main character does not speak. She might only kind of hum or sing. Um and by the end, as she embraces her song, she speaks and then heals the planet. This is a completely new way. We talking about Avar Chris, kind of like the Force is music, all that kind of stuff. No, but
Right.
the Force is a song, dark or not. You can choose to listen to it, and it's what you choose to do with that. Yeah, okay. Maybe was the song bad? No, it was the energy she put into the song that healed everything around her. It was the energy she brought to the Force, not that the Force brought to her.
Right.
And that was very interesting. Um, I was so, it was fun. It was good to watch. It really it was a unique art style. I just thought it was gorgeous. I thought it was a gorgeous metaphor. I was really happy for this character to be the first of her kind to go off to the stars. And it was one of the few times that you see someone kind of leaving off for their next journey. And I'm like, I'm comfortable with that being it.
Yeah.
I'm like, good. I need to let this character go. She can go off and see the stars, live her life, become a Padawan, and that's okay. I don't need to be a part of that. Her life is closer to what she needs now.
Yeah, I think that was very well said. For me, I was like, I just this is the most adorable thing I think I've
Oh
seen
yeah. Oh yeah.
in such a long time.
I
It
just want
felt you
plushes
brought up
now.
those little like Wes Anderson films. I was thinking for me the vibe I was getting was very much like Little Big Planet, like
Oh
with
yeah.
Sackboy, like just like all these little felt people running around, like,
Yeah, that's a great callback.
and
Oh
it's
man,
just,
that's really hating us there, but that's hilarious.
but yeah, I really like this one. I don't have a lot. This one I probably have the least to say
Which
about.
is okay.
Yeah, I mean it was just beautiful. I think you just kind of said everything about it. I love how it's for her. It's like the heal it, like fixing or healing the planet and the crystals is very much like just the noise that it like her singing is harmonizing, which I love.
Yeah. Um I mean, I don't have much to say about this in either, so I kind of just want to give some final thoughts on Visions as a whole. I got to say, after watching this, I really love the first volume of Visions, but I'm more impressed with what we got here, and I'm very happy that Disney brought in so much diversity of thought and culture
Yeah.
into this. And we can talk about that all day long, and be just like, oh, performative, oh, you're saying that because it's just different. No,
Right.
this was truly beautiful. It was truly interesting. We got so much depth in what was going on here, and I'm left with some things that were, hey, it's not for me, but I could see this being someone's cup of tea. To, oh, that was enjoyable and that was fun. To, I'm glad I watched that and it was beautiful to look at. To the, holy shit, this, I need this. I'm gonna binge 1,000 episodes of it. I'm never going anywhere again. I'm gonna take a week off of vacation and watch it all in one sitting. It
Wonder which
was,
one that is for you.
yeah, Journey of the Dark Head.
Yeah.
It was absolutely a great time to watch and very beautiful. I love highlighting animation. I love highlighting studios, and I think these days animation especially um, is being cheaped out on. I mean, if you look at a lot of the Disney movies that are coming out now, with live action CGI, and they're super dark. You look a lot of the animation that's popular now. You think about oh my gosh, who did the Minions? Um,
Is that just Sony?
no, God, production studio, but essentially, these style of movies.
I know what you're talking about, where it's just like, oh wow, there's like they use the same asset like 50 times in the background.
Illumination, where they're doing the cheapest animation they possibly can.
We say that after the Mario movie, but yeah.
I refuse to watch it. I haven't.
I also refuse to watch it. I'm glad we're on the same boat.
This is so antithetical to everything that's going on in that mainstream setting, where there is so much care, so much beauty into what is going on. And I will be honest, at times when I'm watching new Star Wars content, I don't think there's a level of care put in that we saw in some of these, even the ones I didn't like. I truly think people cared about what they were doing and put more heart into these 15 minutes and because it's always going to happen, I'm going to bring it back to my sequel hate, then more love and passion than got put into the sequel on some of this. And that can be controversial, but I would really tell you to go watch The Spy Dancer and tell me they didn't have passion for Star Wars and their art and everything they were doing.
Agreed. Well, I will certainly say you could say there's a much stronger commitment to the vision. Sorry.
There you go, Charlie. You got a pun in.
I did it. I got a Visions pun.
Your Outer Rim Radio bingo card filled out for the day.
Done.
I was really happy with this. I think I love Visions. I hope we get one every year. I really hope they continue to get more diversity in here. I just I pray to the good Lord above that I get a journey to the Darkhead sequel.
Well, here's the thing, right? Because we did talk about last season or first one of like which ones do we want to see like turn into shows. There's High Republic like manga comics. I think it's entirely possible that the next Star Wars celebration in Japan, that maybe a certain few anime ones could become canon shows. I know they say they're not canon. Even if they're not canon, I don't really care. I would just want to watch them if we get more of them. I still want more of the Ninth Jedi. I still want more of. I know you want Village Bride.
Oh yeah.
I loved The Elder. I definitely loved, Journey to the Darkhead this season. So I'm hoping that any more Star Wars animation is always good. But I'm super excited for the future, and I really hope they make at least one of these shows into a series, or these shorts.
Yeah. Also, Star Wars, Wallace and Gromit, didn't know I needed that. So thanks.
Yeah, I didn't know I needed that. I like the Wookiee,
Yeah, so much is fun stuff in this, and it was a great time. And as much as we could sit here and pick apart books, and I can essentially have a breakdown last week about Kevmo dying, I'm glad I didn't have to do that today, and I'm ending on a very happy note rather than going to bed depressed. So
yeah.
Oh, Charlie, that's all I got, man. You got anything else you want to talk about with?
I think that's gonna do it for us. Take us out.
Well, everybody, thanks for tuning in from all across the galaxy. If you all like the episode, please consider subscribing to our podcast, sharing our podcast with a friend or a family member who might enjoy it. If you want to interact with us, help us make the show better. Consider interacting with us on our Discord, Twitter, which you can find down in the show notes.
Leave a comment, a review.
That too. Once again, though, thanks for tuning in. Goodbye, and may the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you.